Are you a businesswoman who is finding it challenging to get your ideas across and make a point? Welcome to Speakers Who Get Results with Elizabeth Bachman, a podcast dedicated to helping women get the visibility they want, whether making a speech or talking in a meeting. Every week, get valuable lessons from Elizabeth or learn from her roundtable conversations with experts and speakers on how to make a difference, not just a point. On to the show with your host, Elizabeth Bachman.
Hello and welcome to Speakers Who Get Results. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, your host, and this is the podcast where we interview experts from around the world on topics such as presentation skills, leadership, visibility, communication challenges. My guest today is Sherry Winn, who is an Olympic athlete and a leadership coach. But before I tell you all about Sherry, I want to remind you that if you're curious how your presentation skills are shaping up, you can take our free assessment at speakforresultsquiz.com. That's speakforresultsquiz.com. And there in about 4 minutes, you can see where your presentation skills are strong and where a little support might help you get better results. My conversation with Sherry Winn was very interesting. We had, not only is she a two-time Olympian, was the National Basketball Coach of the Year, and a three-time best-selling author on Amazon. She's an in-demand, internationally renowned speaker, and she frequently speaks for up to 14,000 people at a time, including for companies such as StubHub, Anytime Fitness, New York Life, Edward Jones, and Technicolor. She had over 34 years of practicing leadership as a national championship basketball coach and as a two-time Olympian. Sherry's an expert at coaching leaders and team members to championship status. She's successfully taken leaders beyond their levels of comfort to win against competitors who are superior in talent, facilities, and financial budgets. Through her Winn philosophy and her winner principles, she shares insider secrets on how to succeed even when the odds seem insurmountable, so that your team feels, acts, and conquers their goals like Olympians. We started out talking about how she was discriminated against as a gay woman in sports. This podcast, this episode, is part of the Pride Month series of Speakers Who Get Results, where we are featuring renowned experts who happen to be gay. Sherry talked about how do you face discrimination, how do you feel about discrimination, and what it was like for her as a gay woman on the U.S. Olympic team. We also talked about leadership and how we need to know each other, and we need to know ourselves, we need to know who we're talking to. The Winn philosophy, which is W-I-N, and is very good, very exciting and interesting. And that led us into a conversation about giving and receiving feedback, which has so many interesting things. I'm going to go back to the recording and listen over and over again so that I can be better at my giving and receiving feedback. So now, without further ado, let's go to the interview with Sherry Winn. Sherry Winn, welcome to Speakers Who Get Results.
Hey, thank you, Elizabeth. So happy to be here. It's a beautiful day here in Montana, and I'm thrilled to be chatting with you this morning.
Well, I'm happy to be talking to you. I have to remember to ask you about the colorful tennis shoes. So that's one of the things I always remember from whenever I've seen you is you've got these great bright tennis shoes on. But before we do that, I want to ask you about your dream interview. If you could interview somebody who is no longer with us, who would it be? What would you ask them? And who should be listening?
Well, Wilma Rudolph was an Olympian in 1960. She won the first woman to ever win 3 gold medals at an Olympic Games. And why she's so impressive is not that she won the 3 gold, which is incredible, but she was born with polio. And so when she was a child, she couldn't walk. I mean, they didn't think she'd ever be able to walk without braces. They didn't think she'd ever be able to run, like that was an impossibility. But for Wilma and her mom, that was not, they didn't accept that. So they didn't accept what other people believed as reality. And so what I find and what I love to see people do is escape the prison that somebody else has put them in, right? So even when everybody else is saying, this is the only possibility you have, and they just go, nope, not going to live that life. I'm going to choose to live the life that I want. So I'd ask, Wilma, I want to know, what was your key? Like, how were you able to overcome all these, beliefs that other people had, these limiting beliefs they had placed on you? How did you overcome that? And what was the driving force behind you becoming so incredibly athletic that you could win not 1, not 2, but 3 gold medals that had never, ever been done before? That's what I find fascinating in people.
Well, and she was a Black woman. So even, growing up in the 50s, it was the 1960 Olympics, she was dealing with segregation and Jim Crow and all of that. And as a woman and as a Black woman, she made it to the U.S. Olympic team, and then she won three gold medals. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, being Black at that time was not an easy path either. So somebody who could forgo all the limitations, all the beliefs that were thrown at them by other people, the hatred, that was thrown at them by other people, and to overcome that and to live a life of her dreams. I think that's something we all aspire to do, is to live the life of our dreams and not to allow other people to bundle us up in their belief systems.
Yeah, well, other people tend to define you, and that's always the challenge, is how do you answer that? Well, and as we are talking about this is the first interview of the Pride Month series that I'm doing. So this is going to be broadcast at the beginning of June 2021. And my nod to wonderful experts who just happened to be gay. So you had this career on the Olympic team and then as a coach. Did you face discrimination as a gay woman?
Absolutely, in many different ways. But one of the first things I remember was being at the World Championships in 1981 in Budapest, Hungary. Our team sitting down for a meal, as we used to do, these, big long tables that took, meals took about an hour and a half, and we would start having conversations. One of my teammates said, and I'll never forget this, I will never forget this. She said they should take all gay people, put them on an island, and then blow up the island. Oh. That was one of my first memories of being discriminated and being hated by a team member.
By what you were instead of who you were.
Right. And then, there were many others.
Did she know you were gay? Did you know you were gay at this point?
I knew. I don't know that she knew. I can't imagine. Well, maybe I could imagine that would occur. But certainly there were many incidences where teammates said things that were harmful and hurtful. The coaches at that time this was 81, really didn't talk about it. Although there have been incidences before I'd gotten on the team where the coach blamed lesbians, blamed the women on the team for a loss, for not qualifying for a specific event. So that had happened, before I'd got on the team. So I was aware that there was, certain biases against discrimination against, being gay, being a lesbian. It was already there.
I thought women's sports were full of lesbians.
Yes.
Okay. But in 1981, they weren't out.
nobody was out. Like nobody was out. It was very hidden, rarely talked about. And I can remember one of the things that happened. Gosh, this must have been 83-ish. And there was a soap opera, and I don't remember the soap opera because I didn't watch them. But there was a soap opera who was going to introduce a gay actor on the soap opera. And I can remember us, the gay women, all gathering in the room because we couldn't believe this was actually going to occur. So that was something that was new and not like today, right? Not at all like today, but that was very new and original and a risk at that time. But later I will tell you this, in 1988, my coach, the Olympic coach, sexually harassed me during the Olympic Games. Okay, so this was while we were there. And one of the things that was later said to me as I, reported this was that he could not have possibly harassed me because I was a lesbian.
Oh, okay. Yeah, goodness gracious. Goodness. So, oh dear. We've come a long way. We have a long way still to go, but we've come a long way. So it's good to know. When you were a coach, did you face discrimination?
Oh,
when you
absolutely.
were the person in power?
There was an event that occurred that was really horrific. So I was accused by my players of sexually harassing them. Okay, so going backwards, the team had been losing for a long time. When I came in, there were 2 girls on the team whose parents were prominent members of the community. They were not my recruits. They were already there. Their parents had a lot of money. And as I came in, I started making changes. So one resulted in less playing time for a young lady, and the other was less points per game, right? And so as their parents got onto them, got angry at them, they then had to find a scapegoat, right? So they created a story that I was sexually harassing them and went to the administration. And the administration, not knowing how to deal with this, did not interrogate them. So they let them just tell a story. And then they let things go like, this was their biggest claim. And this is insane. I mean, thinking backwards, this is insane. She forced us against our will to sit with a lesbian at our table, which did not happen. But even then, right, even in that occurred, right? So what happened was we lost a game and they wanted to go home with their parents. And I said, no, we're going to sit together as a team. Now, your parents are welcome to join us, but we're going to sit together as a team and have dinner together. And one of my friends who didn't walk in and go, I'm a lesbian. She didn't do that. I mean, she wasn't like saying anything that would be, associated with it. She just came and set the table with us. That's all she did. And so that was their main claim of sexual harassment. And I almost got fired for it.
Oh my goodness. Now, were you working for a school at this point? Yeah,
I was.
Yeah.
There was media. I mean, Denver Post ran with this article, splashed it across the whole headline, woman coach sexually harasses her team members. The news reporters came to interview. I did not, once I'd been interviewed by the newspaper and I saw what they did to my answers, how they took my answers and chopped them up to make it seem that I was guilty. I refused to be interviewed again. I was like, I'm not going to do this again, because they wanted the big story. They did not
want the big story. Yes. Yeah. Now, as a coach, as a leadership coach, how do you use what you learned from that experience to help others? How does that feed into what you're doing now?
Well, the number one thing that makes a great leader is emotional intelligence. Okay.
Emotional intelligence. Okay.
Emotional intelligence. So looking at that, what that means is, number one, the ability to be self-aware. Number two is the ability to manage your emotions. So, why is that important? Your ability to manage emotions, because the third thing that emotional intelligence is the ability to manage your relationships. Well, listen, if you can't manage your emotions, you cannot manage relationships. So you can't manage your emotions if you don't know who you are and why you are who you are. So all of that is bundled together. And in all of that means that, listen, your most important thing is people. In any business, it's your people. So your relationships are essential in everything you do. So relationships with somebody else, your team members, your leaders, your board of directors, your customers, your clients. And so all this comes back to, the ability to manage your emotions. So if you don't like yourself, there's no possibility of you liking anybody else. If you judge others for who they are, it's going to be impossible to have a great relationship with them. So, when you're talking about this, it's really about accepting people for who they are, working with them, no matter who they are, or their religion, their culture, their sexual orientation, their age, all of those things. What the most important thing is, can they and are they willing to do their job and do to the best of their ability? That's what matters, right? And how do you do that is to build great relationships with people and to help people in their relationship and in their personal growth.
Okay. All right. So as you've been talking about all of this, I'd be curious how you've mentioned the Winn formula. And, Sherry Winn, that's great name to go ahead and use that for a brand and how you talk about it. What is the Winn formula?
So when I talk about the Winn philosophy, and it comes in my book, Unleash the Winner Within You, a success game plan for business, leadership, and life. When I talk about that, the Winn philosophy, it's really based on three things. W stands Widen the Separator Gap. What that means is most people just do the givens, right? So it's a given that if you have a job, you go to your job. It's a given that you do the things you're supposed to do. It's a given that you do satisfactory work. Those are all givens. A lot of people do the givens and they want what the separators have. So if you're going to be successful, you have to be willing to do the things that nobody else is willing to do. That creates you as a separator. So that's
and
the
define
W.
separator for us, please.
So a separator is more successful. And why are they more successful? Because they're willing to do the things that nobody else is willing to do. So success can be different things. It could be wealth. It could be great relationships. It could be better health. It could be many different things, however you define it. But most people aren't willing to do the extra. They just want. They're not willing to do. So that's the W.
So and let me just finish with the separator. So the separator separates themselves from the normal. Is that from the run of the mill?
From the average.
From the average.
Okay. From the average.
Okay. Great. I love it. That's a great term. I'm going to have to start quoting you now.
Feel free to.
So Winn is for, give me that one again.
Okay.
W again.
So W stands for Widen the Separator Gap.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
I is for identify I am as your power words, because the two most powerful words in the universe are the words I am, because whatever you say after those words, it becomes your truth. So we're not aware of the internal words that we say. And so many times, our internal words are things like, I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not handsome enough. I am not smart enough. And we use those words, we expect a different result. And so you become what you think about most of the time, whether you want it or not. And so really becoming aware of the words that you use, because that determines your outcome. So successful people dream about success. They talk about success internally. And when I say success, again, look, it's really broad. It could be, happiness could be success for you, which, by the way, most people spend their entire lives trying to get happy, and very few attain that. So that's the I, is identify I am as your power words. And the N is navigate success. So many people think success just comes, and they will tell me a multitude of excuses of why they haven't gotten there. And what I say is, you must navigate it. You can't just expect success. You will have obstacles. They are certain in your life. None of us, not one of us, escapes the challenges of life. None of us escape challenges of life. The people who gain success are the people who are willing to navigate it. They find a way through it. I heard many people, Elizabeth, say to me, I would have been an Olympian if only. And I'm like, no. Stop it. There's no if only. If you would have been an Olympian, you would have been an Olympian. There is no if only in there. There's no excuse. There's no label. There's nothing that you can put in there that makes it okay. You either were or you weren't, and that's it.
Yeah. And certainly whether you actually make it to an Olympic team or not, you do learn great things. How do you share with that the things that you learned along the way that we can use in everyday life?
Well, that's a great question. Thank you for being so incredibly intuitive on that. The first thing is that we always think it's the result that we're aiming for, because we think the result is going to define us. And so what I noticed about myself is I believe that if I became an Olympian, I would attain all the things I thought that I was looking for. And when I got there, was like, wow, this is not it. So then I had to become a two-time Olympian. And once again, after that success, that pinnacle, I still did not feel the things I wanted to feel. So then I thought I need to become a national championship coach, and then I will get it. And none of those were what I was looking for. So what I was looking for was internal. It's never external. We just think it's external. Right. What you're looking for is always internal. And so really, and I'm not saying don't go for, certainly for what you want. Absolutely go for everything that you desire. Do that. But what you want to do is understand that everything you desire is within you. It's not outside of you. And so the first thing you're looking for is, what do I think I'm missing within my life? And it's not out there somewhere. It's always inside. So your journey is within. And we think our journey is outside of us. But the toughest journey that you're ever going to face, is inside of you.
Ah, yes, absolutely. Isn't that always the way? Is that to learn what we learn about ourselves is always the most important part. And then, especially for leadership, you have to know yourself well enough to know what you're good at, and maybe what you're not good at, or where the traps are. I know that for many years, there are certain things I will tell my staff, because to say, okay, here's where I know I'm not good at this. And so I need you to support me here. This is one of the things where you'll tell me and it's going to run straight out of my brain. It's going to go, it won't even stick for 5 minutes. So I want to have somebody else who does that, who's easy for that. This is exciting about the things that you've been doing, how you're doing that. As you are, how do we apply this philosophy in business, in life, in leadership? How can we think of the Winn philosophy?
So again, you're great. You're great at asking tough questions. So thank you for making me dig.
Hey, the whole reason for being a podcast host is to interview really smart people so that you can learn from them. And I want to learn from you, Adam.
Well, thank you.
How can we apply it?
I think that, when I coach CEOs and CFOs, COOs, even middle management, and the first thing we're going to do is to tap into self-awareness, because that's the most important thing you can do, is to learn. It's the most important thing, because you have to learn who you are, because you cannot give what you don't have. So, and people think that they know who they are, but the truth is, it's only through a continual journey do we really discover all of us. I'm always in self-discovery. So I have coaches who help me, again, look at myself and I'm like, what? Really? Like I do that? No way. Like my first thing, anytime you get defensive, if somebody says something to you and you get defensive, that's a great indicator that that's part of what you need to work on, right?
Oh,
that
yeah. I hate
that's
that
the
too.
good indicator.
Like, oh, yeah, really. I hate it when my trainers are right. I thought I was good. Oh, gee, yes, exactly. Right. It's taken me years to learn to be able to do that. Yes.
Yeah. And you know what? People want to be led by somebody who's very self-aware. I was talking to the CEO of, I'm writing a new book called Winning Leadership, 7 Secrets to Employee Champions and Sales Superstars. And I've been interviewing CEOs, around the country. And I was talking to the former CEO of FedEx Distribution Center. So he was pretty high in the chain. And he's now CEO of Herbal Distributing. Wonderful man, wonderful man. And so we're talking, and this is what I loved about him because he's so self-aware. We were talking and he said that he sent out like a video to this team, because you have 850 distribution centers. You're not going to talk to every one of them. Right. Sent out a video and his DEI, right, calls him up, his vice president.
So that's the diversity, equity, and inclusion person.
Calls him and says, you know what? He said, you missed a great opportunity. You weren't aware of the things you didn't say and the things you needed to say. And what he said was, he's like, oh my gosh. He said, first thing I wanted to do was to tell him I'm right, how long I've been in this business. I know what I'm doing. He said, I stopped. And I thought about it. And he said, at that moment, I wasn't able to say that she was right. He said, I had to think about it. And so he ends the conversation and he thinks about it and he goes, you know what? I was wrong. She's right. And he calls her and says, I'm so sorry. You're right. I should have first gone to you. I should have listened to you. I should have recognized that there's a better opportunity here, and I apologize. And so the result of that was she sent him an email saying, you are the most incredible person I've ever worked for. This is the first response I've ever gotten from somebody who apologized. She goes, I was ready for a fight. I was ready to gear up and fight you. And instead, you recognized. She goes, I can't even begin to explain to you the difference this makes. And so what I say to people when I'm working with them, and I wish I was the one who worked with this guy, but he was far advanced. He's way up there. He's already done the work. But many of the people I work with haven't done the work. And so they don't get the same result as this CEO got, right? So now he has somebody uber motivated to work for him. Yeah. That's what happens. When you are aware of, and you're able to recognize your defense system, and you're able to hear the internal words, and then you're able to recognize you don't have to be right, because this is the number one thing that creates conflicts, Elizabeth, is our need to be right. It's the number one thing. And it happens often to us, and we don't even recognize it as it's occurring. But when you can get people to recognize that. So that's the self-awareness piece. And for me, that's what widens the separator gap, is people who are willing to do the internal work.
As you were talking about this, I was thinking about the topic of feedback. Giving and getting feedback. And a lot of the work that I do is around communication between men and women, where we really should assume that men and women are speaking different languages, so we don't think we understand each other, or rather the masculine mode and the feminine mode, because there's certainly men who are well in the feminine mode and women who are in the masculine mode, and it's not all the time. One of the things I've been noticing and working on for myself is men, or the masculine mode, is to treat feedback as information. The feminine mode receives feedback as a personal criticism. I keep thinking about that line from the movie You've Got Mail, where Tom Hanks says to Meg Ryan, it's not personal, it's just business. And that made sense to me. It makes a lot more sense to me now. I don't think the screenwriters intended it that way, but I think of it. How can we treat the challenge of giving feedback? Mm-hmm. And then how can we treat the challenge of getting feedback?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, thank you for really being a person who recognizes the need for that, and for, coaching people on that. That's beautiful. I think that the first thing is we have to teach people that, the difference between criticism and constructive feedback, because people don't know. And what I mean by that is, so many times your leader, your bosses, your coaches are giving you constructive feedback, and what you hear is criticism. And the reason that occurs is that we don't know the difference, and we've never been taught the difference. So one of the things I teach people is that criticism is demeaning, demoralizing, and destructive. Let me say that again. Criticism is demeaning, demoralizing, and destructive. So when a person gives you that, you then go to that, don't take it personal, because it's not about you. Because it's not. When somebody is that person, then it's not ever about you. It's about who they are. It's about their lifetime of experiences that have brought him to this place. And now the biggest mistake we make is when somebody's criticizing us and they're being negative, is that we allow that person, we take their story as our story, and we don't see the difference. So that's criticism. So the first thing you teach people is there's a difference between criticism and coaching. I like to call it coaching. You can call it constructive feedback, and please never, ever call it constructive criticism, because the word criticism implies something negative. Yes. So we have to teach people that coaching is a gift. So if I care enough about you, Elizabeth, to want you to be better, to give you the opportunity to be more successful, I'm giving you a gift. And so we literally have to teach people the difference between criticism and coaching, and why we coach. And what happens is that many times we forget that people think that they're the same thing. And we have to really make the effort to remember and to remind people and to teach people, if I'm giving you the gift, if I'm coaching you and you get defensive, I have to stop and say, Elizabeth, remember that the reason that I'm having this conversation is with you is because I care. And I want you to be better. Like, I want you to have the best, most successful career that you can have. That's why I'm offering you this gift. That's what people forget to do. And that's why it doesn't work.
Okay. And on the receiving end, if you, actually, there's another piece of this. Let's follow this thread a little bit. Okay. There's another piece of it about not being specific, especially women and female leaders who have to criticize their team will be so gentle that the person who needs to change doesn't understand that they need to change. I'm sure you found that.
I would say there's no ever reason to criticize. So I would say there's never a reason to criticize. There's lots of reasons to give coaching. And so criticism to me is not getting a result. It's being demeaning, demoralizing, and destructive. So if I feel the need to coach my team, right, and I'm too soft. So there's a difference between, I think, coaching and having the critical conversation, or the crucial, don't say critical, the crucial conversation. Mm-hmm. So what I'm hearing you say, Elizabeth, is the crucial conversation. So coaching is like, you've got misdirection. I need to change your course of action to get you back on track. That's coaching, right? When you need to have this other conversation, this crucial conversation, what you're talking about, and we get too soft, well, that's different, because what happens is we don't know how to have that crucial conversation, and we get too soft, and then the person misses the point of the conversation. You're still not being critical. You're just simply giving them the roadmap. And I have a specific way I teach this. It's way too long for us to go over right now, but I call it the victorious method. But there's a way to enter this conversation that you go through the conversation so that the person gets the gist of the importance of, they understand that if they don't change, there's going to be a serious consequence. But you can do that in such a way that it's not critical. You can do it in such a way that you're just giving them the roadmap to help them understand the consequences of not changing. And that's the choice, right? They can choose at the end of the conversation which direction they're going to go, but they understand clearly the consequences of not choosing that direction. So I would call this a crucial conversation versus coaching. So there's two different things you're talking about. One is coaching. One is having that crucial conversation. And when you can clearly differentiate and you have the way, and it's having the assertive communication skills, which comes back to you being self-aware, right? You self-aware and having those, and this is not negative. Even if I'm having that tough conversation with you, Elizabeth, it's not negative because I'm giving you the opportunity to change so that you can have a better life and a better career.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and often people who are in masculine mode, shall we say, or I like to say single focused versus multi-focused. People who are single focused don't recognize that the multi-focused people on their team need to feel included. They need to feel like they are a part of something. Because of the single focused person can just do it themselves. They figure like, they could, it's the old hunter versus gatherer metaphor, where the hunter is going to go off and kill that saber-toothed tiger himself and not share and be able to do it, be single focused. You want to be single focused there. Whereas the gatherer is going to notice, the toddler's about to go into the fire, and as I'm walking by, that mushroom is edible and I need to gather this, this, and this. The gatherer needs to be multi-focused and also needs to be part of the group. And
I love the way you said that. That's great. I love that analogy. That's wonderful.
Which means that being socialized into masculine or feminine modes comes from our Neanderthal days. So there's a lot of history there behind us.
Sure.
And as I love what you say about being aware, is as long as you are aware that this is what you will probably default to, then you can intentionally bring in people who are going to bring other pieces to the conversation.
Right. Absolutely. It's gorgeous. I love it. I love it. I love it. Absolutely. I love the way you said that. The hunter and the gatherer. That's great. I love that. You're right. And it comes back to, how do I sound to other people? What is the language that I'm using matching something they can hear? And so many people
yes.
Yeah. So many people go something like, well, I'm the leader. They should just all adapt to me. And I'm like, that's an uncontrollable factor. It's an uncontrollable factor. So what you have control over is you. And so if you have control over you and you want the best results, you have to speak the language that other people can hear. And so you have to know your people. So you have to take the time to know your people. So again, knowing your faults. So for example, like you're saying like the hunter. I would say I'm a hunter, the warrior, the driver, the go-getter, any of those, that's all me. Okay, it's all me. And so I have to recognize that. I have to recognize how I can come across to people. I have to recognize how I can sound. For example, and so this is what I teach people. For example, I was doing a call a year ago. I was going to do a motivational talk in Wyoming to a group of about 5,000 people. I live in Montana. So the power goes out before I leave, because sometimes we get huge windstorms here, and I had to leave. I could not wait for the power to come on because it could be a day. So I leave, I get to, it's about a 6-hour drive. I get to Wyoming. I call my neighbor, the only neighbor I have, by the way, and say, hey, Michelle, I need you to know my house in. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm asking for a favor and I'm giving a command. And I realized that immediately. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I stopped and I said, I'm so sorry, Michelle. How are you doing? Yeah. Do you have power yet? Yeah. So is the wind still blowing? Did you guys lose any of the limbs of your trees or your trees? Is everybody okay? How's your son? Hey, Michelle, would it be possible if you could get to my house and check out my power and turn out the lights for me? I'd really appreciate it. So because I recognized who I was and how I was sounding, I was able to change the conversation. Right. And so when we become aware of who we are and how we sound, we can and not only who we are and how we sound, but how the other person's receiving it. Yeah. When we become aware of that, we can change that and it will give us a different direction. And what that does for you is it helps your people be more motivated. What that does is keep them engaged, highly engaged. What that does is keep you retaining people, right? So a successful business has high engagement. They have higher retention, right? They don't have to worry about those turnover rates. That's what a successful business looks like. And again, it starts with your self-awareness. So the ability to continue to work on that is crucial, essential.
Yes, right. Critical and essential. This is so much fun. I just having so much fun talking about it. Let me just quickly check my list, because I had a massive list of questions to ask you, and want to see if I had something else. Tell us a little bit more about the book you have coming up. It's the seven secrets to what?
7 secrets. It's called Winning Leadership, 7 secrets to employee champions and sales superstars.
Employee champions and
sales superstars.
Sales superstars. Okay.
So that works with my, my background of being a former, 2-time Olympian and national championship basketball coach. So it works well with both my athletic career as a player and as a coach. And now continuing on to understand that not everybody, most people want to be champions, right? Most people want to be superstars. So when I started this book, I was coached. So just like people that I coach, I have a coach. I continue to be coached because I always unravel something new, something better, a better version of myself. So I was coached to go interview, and I've interviewed almost 200. So I'm nearing that mark. Almost 200 CEOs of either really large companies like Land O'Lakes, who the CEO of Land O'Lakes is Beth Ford, who is a lesbian, and she's very wonderful person. From huge corporations to smaller, companies of maybe 20 or 25 or 30. And this process has been wonderful. I mean, first of all, I've developed really wonderful relationships with folks I would never have had an opportunity to speak with. And secondly, it's given me, great stories. So there's 2 things I love, quotes. I love quotes and great stories from people, because people identify with quotes and stories. So it's given me a ton of quotes and stories to put in this book so that other people can, if they want to become a great leader, if they want to sharpen their leadership skills, they can read this book and they're like, oh my gosh, if the CEO of FedEx, or the former CEO of FedEx, or the current CEO of Land O'Lakes, or the former CEO of Blue Cross Blue Shield, or the current CEO of SWCO, all these people who have given such wonderful stories to me. I mean, wonderful stories. I've just had a blast. If these people can do it, or this is how they lead, then I can too.
Can you share the 7 secrets with us, or do we have to wait till the book comes out?
We have to wait till the book comes out because we're still editing them.
Okay.
We're still editing to make sure they sound, the right way, that it really evokes emotion. Because this is what I know, Elizabeth, and I'm sure you know this too, that when people feel something, when they feel it, they're more likely to change.
Okay. Well, Sherry Winn, this has been wonderful. I have one other question I meant to ask you, which is, when I first met you, we were both auditioning for a speaker spot at a conference. And you had these bright tennis shoes. And I've seen pictures of you on stage with bright neon tennis shoes. So clearly this is a brand statement. Why the tennis shoes? I can guess, but I'd like to hear your story.
Well, actually, it's not a brand statement. A lot of people would say it was a brand statement. It came out of necessity. So about 10 years ago, I started losing the fat pads on my feet. So this is really a kind of not very many people have this challenge. And so what happened is I couldn't wear any any shoe that had a hard sole in it. I couldn't stand long enough in those shoes. And so I got these shoes that had really thick soles, soft, thick soles. And I started wearing those shoes because that's the only way I could stand. So if I was standing on stage for an hour in front of, 14,000 people, I wouldn't be able to stand in a pair of really nice, beautiful, hard-soled shoes. I had to wear tennis shoes. And so to this day, I still wear tennis shoes because I still have the problem. And it just becomes a part of who I am. So I will tell you this, Elizabeth. Initially, I was kind of embarrassed about wearing shoes. But it's the same thing, I think, that many people come to about who they are. And if you really look at it, are you embarrassed about your sexual orientation? Are you embarrassed about your skin color? Are you embarrassed about the weight that you are? Are you ashamed about, the color of your hair? That's a self-awareness piece. You have to come to love all parts of you. And so gradually I came to love that part of me as well.
So Sherry Winn, I'm so happy to have you as a guest on Speakers Who Get Results. Is there one thought you could leave us with?
I would just say that the winner is always within you.
The winner is within you.
It's always within you. Stop looking outside of you. It's always within you. Work on those inside thoughts, your inside feelings. Work on loving yourself unconditionally, which, by the way, I think is a lifelong project. But the winner is always within you.
Okay. Thank you so much. This has been Speakers Who Get Results. I'm Elizabeth Bachman, your host. And let me remind you that if you're curious how your presentation skills are stacking up, you can take our free 4-minute assessment at speakforresultsquiz.com. That's speakforresultsquiz.com. And that's where you can see where you are strong with your presentation skills and where a little support might help you get better results. Sherry Winn, thank you for joining us. This has been Elizabeth Bachman, and I'll see you on the next one.
We have just concluded another great episode of Speakers Who Get Results with your host, Elizabeth Bachman. If you got value from today's episode, please feel free to share us with your friends and colleagues. You may also visit elizabethbachman.com for additional resources. Be sure to tune in every week for new episodes, and thanks for tuning in.